The sharp wind off the coast tugged at Mia's coat as she stepped into the old beachfront estate, her 11-year-old daughter Lila clutching her hand. The house, perched on a cliffside in Cape Haven, Massachusetts, hadn't changed much in the decades since Mia had last seen it. The white shutters were now slightly yellowed, and the once pristine garden had surrendered to wild ivy. Inside, though, it wasn't the decay that hurt, it was the people. The moment Mia crossed the threshold, before she could even register the familiar smell of lemon polish and aged wood, a voice struck like a whip. "She doesn't deserve a cent. Dad made that very clear before he died." It was Vanessa, her older sister, seated on the edge of the velvet chaise in the sitting room. Her icy voice cut through the room like broken glass. There was no hello, no acknowledgement, not even a glance in Mia's direction, just that cold declaration, loud enough to ensure everyone heard it. Mia's grip on Lila's hand instinctively tightened. She could feel her daughter's small fingers curled tighter around hers in response. Lila's wide brown eyes scanned the room, already sensing the undercurrent of hostility. Mia tried to offer a comforting smile, but it came out lopsided and thin. Her heart was pounding so loudly in her ears she barely noticed the others, her cousin Dylan pretending to scroll through his phone, Aunt Beatrice staring blankly at the fireplace, and a few others she hadn't seen in years. Each face wore a mask of indifference that barely concealed their judgment. Vanessa, always composed and cunning, wore her signature navy blazer and pearls-like armor. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled into a severe twist at the nape of her neck. Her nails tapped rhythmically on the arm of the chair, a sound that used to make Mia flinch even as a teenager. Then came the voice she dreaded even more. Uncle Victor. Her father's younger brother, always with a drink in one hand and a cruel comment on his tongue. "Even her own kid looks embarrassed," he muttered, not even attempting to lower his voice. His lips curled into a smug half-smile as he motioned lazily in Lila's direction. Lila lowered her head. Mia's chest ached. The room, filled with dark mahogany furniture and the ghosts of memories she'd tried to forget, suddenly felt suffocating. She led Lila quietly to the farthest seat at the dining table, a large, antique piece that once hosted holiday dinners and awkward silences. The chair groaned as she sat. Lila climbed onto the one beside her, her legs swinging above the floor, her little hands folded tightly in her lap like she was hoping to vanish. Mia didn't know why she had come. The envelope had arrived 2 days after the funeral, no message, no return address, just the time and place of the will reading. For a moment, she'd considered tossing it. But then Lila had looked at her and said, "Maybe there's something he wanted you to hear." The child's voice, calm and certain, had caught her off guard. Lila had always been perceptive, too perceptive. Now, in this house that had once echoed with holiday laughter and Sunday arguments, Mia felt like an intruder. The unspoken message was loud and clear: she didn't belong here. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. Vanessa turned to face her, that carefully neutral expression twisted into something that mimicked sympathy, but dripped with condescension. "There's no point staying, Mia. Dad changed the will. You're not in it. He was done with you a long time ago." Mia said nothing. Her mouth was dry, her thoughts tangled. She had known this was likely. She had known what her sister would say, how Uncle Victor would laugh, how no one would look her in the eye. Still, some foolish part of her had hoped for a line, a letter, a scrap of acknowledgment. But no. They had buried their father, and with him, any trace of the daughter he had exiled. 8 years ago, Mia had left this place with nothing but a suitcase, a baby, and a shredded version of herself. The man who had once told her bedtime stories and taught her how to fix a flat tire had slammed the door in her face when she returned home after walking away from a marriage that was breaking her spirit. He hadn't asked why. He hadn't wanted the truth. And no one else had, either. Victor had called her ungrateful. Vanessa had labeled her dramatic. And the rest of the family had watched in silent agreement as she was erased. She'd built a life far away, a modest one. A small apartment. A job at the library. Quiet evenings. Warm meals. Peace. But not a day went by that she didn't feel the ache of rejection deep in her bones. Now, here she was again. Hoping for. What? Closure? Justice? Something. Lila hadn't said a word since they sat down, but her eyes had not stopped watching. She took in every face, every whisper, every smirk. She was her mother's daughter in that way, still and strong in the face of a storm. Mia whispered to herself, "Just get through this." She didn't know what she expected, but she prepared herself to be invisible again. Then the door creaked open, and the lawyer walked in. "Mr. Abbott, the family's longtime legal representative, carried a thick envelope under one arm. He looked older now, thinner, but still sharp-eyed and proper. The room fell silent as he entered, everyone straightening, preparing for the show. Mia inhaled slowly. She knew what came next: Vanessa getting the house, Victor taking over the vineyard, the cousins picking over the antiques like vultures. She braced herself to hear her name omitted, to feel that final rejection cut through her once again. But she had no idea that the tide was about to turn, and that her daughter, quiet and brave, had brought with her a truth no one expected. The misty rain continued to fall over the old rooftops of the lakeside town of Lakenford, as if time itself was trying to blur the harsh edges of memory. Under the awning of a weathered little cafe near the town hall, Alina sat in silence, her hands tightly wrapped around a cup of steaming tea. Beside her, 11-year-old Leo stared out the window, his eyes following the droplets as they traced paths down the glass, almost as if he were trying to read the truth hidden within them. This morning's reading of the will hadn't just shocked Alina. I had gutted her, cut deep into wounds she'd spent years trying to forget. She hadn't just been excluded from her father's estate. She had been erased, as if she never existed at all. But the pain hadn't begun today. It had started over a decade ago, when she left this very town with a newborn in her arms and nothing else. She had walked away from a toxic marriage, and a father who turned his back on her the moment she needed him most. Back then, Alina was just 25. Her son, Leo, had been barely 2 months old, and the Grayson name still carried weight. Her father, Arthur Grayson, was a man of legacy in Lakenford, wealthy, stern, and consumed by pride. But he had never learned how to listen. When Alina told him she could no longer live with Marco, her abusive, alcoholic husband, Arthur didn't ask why. He simply said, "You made your bed. Now lie in it." No hug. No questions. No help. Instead, he clung to the version of the story told by Alina's younger sister, Eliza, the daughter who stayed, the one who always appeared dutiful and composed. Eliza had painted Alina as impulsive, selfish, and disloyal. And the family had accepted it without question. That version of the story spread fast in a town like Lakenford, where gossip moved quicker than truth. The image of Alina as the family's shame, the one who ran, replaced every memory of who she truly was. She had once been the golden girl of the Graysons, but now she was the disgrace, the ghost. She still remembered the first months in the port city of Marlow, 200 kilometers away. She knew no one. Had nothing. Just a crying baby and a duffel bag of baby clothes. She took whatever jobs she could find, cleaning apartments by day, waitressing by night, sometimes 3 shifts in a row just to make rent. But slowly, she built something. A life. Not one made of legacy or money, but of quiet dignity. She got a steady job at the city library. She read bedtime stories to children and learned how to make a home out of a 1-bedroom apartment. Leo grew strong and gentle, always asking questions, always offering hugs when she needed them most. And yet, when she heard that Arthur was dying, a small part of her hoped. Hoped that in the final chapter of his life, he might have found forgiveness. That he might recognize what she had endured and overcome. She didn't want money or property. She only wanted acknowledgment, just a letter, a sentence, a small sign that he saw her as his daughter again. But the will had crushed that hope. This morning, inside the wood-paneled room of the town hall, under the flickering glow of yellow ceiling lights, the family lawyer had read out the will like it was any other piece of business. Eliza received nearly everything: the family home, the accounts, the heirlooms. The uncles, cousins, and distant relatives each got something, however small. Alina's name wasn't mentioned. Not even once. Eliza had sat there, regal and cold, her eyes locking with Alina's in a way that needed no words. That look said everything: "You're not one of us anymore." Alina had held herself together, for Leo's sake. But inside, she was unraveling. Not because of the money. Not even because of Eliza's triumph. But because of the silence. The omission. The final confirmation that, to Arthur Grayson, she had stopped existing long ago. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly, glancing at her son. Leo turned to her and smiled. "I'm okay, Mom. We have each other." Those words, so simple, so sincere, broke something in her. Tears spilled silently down her cheeks. In his eyes, she was still whole. Still strong. Still herself. She looked back out at the rainy street, heart heavy. Maybe she would leave Lakenford sooner than planned. Maybe this place had no room left for her after all. But something tugged at her, an unease, a question unanswered. Had her father truly abandoned her? Or had someone made sure she stayed erased? Was there more behind the cold ink on that page? Alina didn't know. But she intended to find out. And if there was still a thread of truth left in the ruins of this family, she would pull it, no matter how much it hurt. For herself. And for Leo. The tension inside the old town hall was thick enough to drown in. The oak-paneled walls, once proud and polished, now felt like they were leaning in, watching, listening, judging. Every eye in the room had just witnessed Alina Grayson being officially disinherited, and not a single voice had risen in protest. Eliza sat poised and flawless across the long table, her pearl necklace gleaming under the soft glow of the antique chandelier. She hadn't said a word since the reading ended, but her silence was louder than gloating. Around her, the other relatives exchanged glances that ranged from satisfied to awkward. No one looked at Alina. No one offered her so much as a nod. Alina, however, sat perfectly still beside her son, her jaw clenched, one hand resting protectively on Leo's back. It wasn't the money that burned, it was the dismissal. The deliberate erasure of her existence. Even in death, her father had refused to reach across the rift. Then, Leo shifted in his chair. Calm as ever, his voice sliced through the silence. "You forgot the video he recorded." The sentence hung there, sharp and unassuming, like a small stone thrown into a still pond. Conversations died. Heads turned. Alina blinked. "Leo. What are you talking about?" Leo reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. He set it down on the table in front of the lawyer, whose brows lifted in surprise. Written on the front in shaky handwriting were the words, "For Mr. Dalloway, only if it gets ugly." Underneath, in smaller print, "To be delivered by Leo Grayson, or not at all." The lawyer, Mr. Dalloway, frowned. "I wasn't made aware of this." "I know," Leo said, simply. "Grandpa made me promise." He said, "Only if things go wrong. I think this counts." A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Eliza's eyes narrowed like she was trying to burn the envelope with her gaze. Alina stared at her son, stunned. "Leo, when did he give you that?" Leo looked up at her, calm but firm. "Last year. He visited us in Marlow. You were working late. He told me not to tell anyone." Alina's heart skipped. Arthur had come to see them? She'd had no idea. The thought stunned her more than the envelope on the table. Mr. Dalloway cleared his throat and slowly broke the seal. Inside was a single USB drive and a brief handwritten note. "Play this if they try to cut her out. They will." No one spoke as Mr. Dalloway turned to his laptop. His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the USB. A long moment passed, filled with the whirring of the computer's fan and the collective breath-holding of a dozen people. Then the screen lit up. Arthur Grayson appeared, frail but unmistakable, seated in the same study where he had once signed every important document in the Grayson legacy. His hair was white and thin, his shoulders hunched in his chair, but his eyes, those infamous Grayson eyes, were sharp. "If you're seeing this," he began, voice gravelly but clear, "it means what I feared has come to pass." Eliza shifted uncomfortably, crossing her arms. Arthur continued, "Let me be direct. If Alina is in that room, and my will says she gets nothing, then someone made sure it said that." Gasps echoed from the far end of the room. "I was not a perfect father," he admitted. "I let pride and tradition get in the way of love. I believed the wrong people. I failed my daughter when she needed me most. But I tried to make it right. I visited her in Marlow last spring. I saw my grandson. I saw what she built without help, without comfort, without any of us. And I knew, I had made a terrible mistake." Alina covered her mouth, her chest tight with emotion. "I revised my will after that visit," Arthur said. "I had it rewritten. I left Eliza the family home, yes. But I gave Alina equal shares in the accounts, and the lake property in Maple Hollow. I even wrote a letter to be read with it. If that will isn't the one being read to you now." Someone made sure it vanished. The room broke into hushed voices, shocked faces turning toward Eliza. Her calm expression was beginning to crack. "If Eliza is sitting there smug and silent," Arthur added bitterly, "then I was right to be suspicious. She resented her sister. She saw love as competition. She always has." Eliza stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. "This is ridiculous. Anyone could have made that video." Arthur's recorded voice replied, almost like an omen, "If Eliza tries to deny this, she'll say it's fake. She'll stand, just like she is now, and claim she was protecting the family." Don't believe her. The room erupted. Distant cousins exchanged shocked glances. Uncle Martin, who had always seemed to orbit Eliza, looked away, suddenly very interested in the floor tiles. Mr. Dalloway turned off the video and faced the room. This changes everything. Eliza's face had gone pale. You can't possibly be taking that seriously. I'm obligated to, Mr. Dalloway cut in, his tone firm. That's a legally admissible message from the deceased, and if there's a more recent will as he claims, we'll need to locate it immediately. And if it's been tampered with, he glanced at Eliza, there will be consequences. Alina sat motionless. Her mind was spinning, her body frozen between disbelief and relief. Leo leaned into her side and whispered, I told you he remembered. She couldn't speak. She simply pulled him close, kissing the top of his head. For the first time in years, she felt the ice begin to thaw. The room remained silent long after the screen faded to black. Alina barely moved, her fingers gripping the armrest of her chair as though it were the only thing keeping her grounded. Beside her, Leo sat with the calm of someone who had already known the truth. The storm of whispers, shifting glances, and uncomfortable coughs among the relatives barely registered to her anymore. All she could hear was the echo of her father's voice. Mr. Dalloway leaned forward and clicked on a second file from the USB, a video marked simply, for Alina. The screen flickered again. This time, Arthur Grayson wasn't addressing the room full of skeptics. He was speaking directly to the camera. Directly to her. He looked older in this one. More worn down. The soft light of a desk lamp cast long shadows across his face, emphasizing the lines etched by time and regret. His eyes, however, held none of the cold distance Alina remembered from her childhood. They were softer now. Sadder. He began without preamble. Alina. He said her name like it was something fragile, something he was afraid might break in his mouth. She felt her throat tighten. I don't know if you're watching this. I don't know if you're even in that room. But if you are, I need you to hear me. Not as a lawyer. Not as the man who signed a dozen documents that shaped this family. I need you to hear me as your father. He paused, eyes lowering briefly before looking back at the camera. I was wrong. Those 3 words landed with more force than any will or inheritance ever could. I let myself be blinded. I believed Karen when she said you were reckless. I believed Rick when he said you were bitter and manipulative. And most of all, I believed that you had walked away because you didn't care about this family. About me. He shook his head slowly, his voice thick with regret. But I was the one who turned away first. You came to me, desperate for help, scared, hurting, a young mother trying to protect her son. And instead of opening my arms, I slammed the door shut. I told myself it was about loyalty, about reputation, about tradition. But it wasn't. It was about my pride. And my pride cost me my daughter. Alina felt something crack in her chest, like a glass wall beginning to splinter. She hadn't even realized she was crying until Leo reached over and gently took her hand. Arthur continued, voice growing more uneven. I came to see you last spring. You didn't know. You were out. But I saw Leo. I spoke to him. He's a remarkable boy, so bright, so composed. I saw how much of you lives in him. And I saw what you built with nothing but your will and your heart. No help. No support. And still. You built a life for him. He smiled faintly, but there was sorrow behind it. I spent so long thinking I was teaching you strength by withholding it. But you were strong in spite of me. You didn't abandon the family. The family abandoned you. Alina's eyes burned. Her nails dug into her palm. Every sentence from the screen felt like a bomb, and a wound. I want to make it right, Arthur said. It's late. Maybe too late. But I changed the will after I visited. I had it notarized and filed with a separate attorney, someone outside the family's reach. If you're seeing this, it means the version you heard wasn't the real one. And if that's the case, then Eliza. She may have had something to do with that. I'm sorry for that too. I let her shape too much of what I believed. He leaned forward slightly, his voice quieting. The house in Willow Bend, it's yours. The savings account tied to the estate, half of it goes to you. The other half goes into a trust for Leo's education, fully accessible when he turns 18. I know it doesn't make up for what I did. But I hope it helps you move forward. His voice faltered then, and for a long moment he just looked into the camera. Not the stern patriarch of the Grayson legacy. Just a tired, broken man trying to reach a daughter he'd once let go. I love you, Alina. I should have said it years ago. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry. The screen went black. Alina sat motionless. The room around her was still filled with murmuring relatives, faces painted with everything from shame to disbelief. But she didn't hear them. She only heard the word she'd waited her whole life to hear. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry. Leo gave her hand a squeeze. She turned to look at him and saw the smallest smile on his face, the smile of someone who already knew the ending was going to change. Across the room, Eliza stood frozen. Her face had gone pale, her lips parted slightly in what could have been fear or fury. For the first time, the confidence had drained from her posture. She looked not like a victor, but like someone who had just been caught. Mr. Dalloway closed the laptop slowly, glancing toward Alina. Miss Grayson, he said, his voice gentler than it had been all day, we'll begin the process of validating the updated will. There will be legal procedures, but the documentation seems solid. You and your son will be contacted shortly. Alina nodded numbly. It wasn't the money or the house that filled her chest with emotion. It was the validation. The restoration of a truth she had never stopped believing in, even when no one else had stood by her. As people began to shuffle out of the room, some silent, some whispering apologies too late, Alina stood and looked at the place where the video had played. Her heart still ached, but now, it ached with healing. Leo looked up at her. He meant it, Mom. I know, she whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. For the first time. I know. Silence held the room hostage. The hum of the air conditioner, the faint creak of an old wooden chair shifting under someone's weight, every sound seemed too loud against the backdrop of what had just unfolded. For a full minute, no one spoke. The screen had gone black, but the final words Arthur Grayson left behind still clung to the air, impossible to ignore. I'm proud of you. Alina stood motionless, her hand still in Leo's. A storm of emotion swirled behind her eyes, relief, sorrow, vindication. But most of all, peace. A kind of peace she hadn't felt in over a decade. Across from her, Karen was frozen. Her mouth had opened slightly, but no words came. Her face, once sharp with arrogance, was pale with disbelief. She looked like someone who had just watched the ground shift beneath their feet, and realized it might never settle back the same way again. Rick, meanwhile, was slumped low in his seat, staring at the table like it might offer him a way out. There was no righteous indignation left in him. No smug smile. Only the hollow expression of a man who knew he'd lost something he could never get back. A few relatives stood and left quietly. No goodbyes. No eye contact. Some had watched the video with eyes full of doubt that slowly turned to shame. Others had barely looked up, too entrenched in the narrative they had helped uphold for years. Either way, their exits were silent acknowledgments of guilt. Mr. Dalloway, the lawyer, cleared his throat gently. I believe that concludes today's reading. As I said earlier, we will begin the legal process of validating Mr. Grayson's revised will. All parties involved will be notified. His voice was calm, respectful. But there was a subtle shift in his tone, like even he had just seen a side of Arthur he hadn't expected. Alina turned to him and gave a small nod. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but steady. Karen finally found her voice, though it came out hoarse. This can't be legal. He changed everything? Just like that? Because of some video? Mr. Dalloway raised an eyebrow. Because of a signed, notarized amendment and a video confirming his intentions. Yes. But I'm his daughter, Karen protested. I was here. I stayed. She left. Alina slowly turned to face her sister. I didn't leave, Karen. I escaped. Karen's face reddened. She opened her mouth again, but this time Leo spoke first. You lied about my mom, he said simply, his voice carrying more weight than his 10 years would suggest. You made everyone think she didn't care. But she never stopped caring. You just didn't want to see it. Karen looked at the boy, this small, quiet child who had undone everything with a single envelope, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Not just about her inheritance, but about herself. Alina bent down slightly and looked Leo in the eyes. Why didn't you tell me you had that envelope? He shrugged, brushing a bit of dark hair from his forehead. I don't know what it was at first. Grandpa gave it to me when we saw him that one time in the park. Said to only give it to the lawyer if things got ugly. I didn't really understand what he meant. Until today. Her heart caught in her throat. You held onto it all this time? Leo nodded. I knew it mattered. And I wanted you to know the truth. Alina pulled him into her arms, hugging him tightly. You saved me, she whispered. No, he said against her shoulder. You saved yourself. I just helped. She smiled through the tears, her heart full. As the last few relatives trickled out, Mr. Dalloway handed her a thick folder. This contains the amended will and documents regarding the estate, house, and trust. You'll need to schedule a meeting in the next week or so to go over the details. Thank you, she said again, her voice firmer now. She glanced toward Karen and Rick, who stood on opposite ends of the room, looking like strangers to each other, and to everyone else. Alina took Leo's hand and turned toward the door. The marble floors beneath her shoes no longer echoed the emptiness she once felt. Now, every step felt solid, real. She paused in the doorway and looked back one final time, not at Karen or Rick, but at the long wooden table where years of resentment had finally unraveled. For so long, she had feared returning to this house, this family. She had feared the judgment, the rejection, the silence. But now, she felt none of that. She had heard the words that mattered. I'm sorry. I love you. I'm proud of you. And somehow, those words had stitched something back together in her. Outside, the afternoon light poured across the stone steps. Leo squinted up at her as they walked down together. So, what now? Alina looked out across the estate, at the overgrown gardens, the winding paths she hadn't walked since her teenage years. Now, she said, we start fresh. Does that mean we're moving here? Leo asked, half curious, half hopeful. Maybe, she said. Or maybe we just visit. It's not about the place. It's about what we make of it. He nodded thoughtfully, then squeezed her hand. I'm glad he said what he said. Me too, she said. It doesn't erase the past. But it makes the future feel possible. Together, they walked toward the car, no longer guests in a hostile home, but rightful heirs to a story that had finally been rewritten. Alina wasn't broken anymore. She was whole. And for the first time in a very long time, she believed she was exactly where she was meant to be.